Hi guys, welcome. Today we're going to be looking at a mock interview question when you're applying for an ab initio language to Oxford or Cambridge. So ab initio means a language that you're taking from scratch. So in Cambridge you can apply for MML and do 2 post A-level languages, or a post A-level language and an ab initio language. Or you can also do other degrees that involve languages. So for example, I do Asian and Middle Eastern studies, and with that I'm studying Arabic from scratch. In Oxford, you also have this option, but the interview process and the test process is a little bit different, because in Oxford you do an MLAT test. And we'll actually look at an example of this MLAT test later. But in Cambridge, often you might be presented with this kind of question in the actual interview. So let's look at it together. So what we're going to be looking at today is an artificial language. So often the interviewer may present you with a bit of information about the language. That could be vocab lists or certain sentences that show different grammar structures, and it's all made up of an artificial language that they've created. It's not a real language. And you have to look at the information that they've given, and based on that create sort of a list of grammar structures, grammar rules, sort of patterns in vocab, and then answer questions based on that. And in Oxford, in the MLAT test, there is a section at the bottom if you're applying for an ab initio language, where they give you this test. They present you with an artificial language that you have to answer questions on. So they'll often give you some information at the beginning just to get you going. So we're going to be looking at an artificial language called Sobot. And like English, Sobot has a fixed word order, so like subject, verb, object. Unlike English, however, it doesn't distinguish between simple and progressive tenses. So how in English we say he goes or he is going, they don't have that. So you have to look at the following sentences and words and create kind of a list of grammar rules from it, and then answer the questions based on that. And they give you a hint. So they say keep an eye on the grammatical gender of words. So how you have in English, you have ram, which is masculine, you, which is feminine, and then you've got sheep, which is kind of neither. Keep an eye on those sort of feminine, masculine, and like neutral words. Okay, so let's get started. So you'll be presented with usually a list of vocab. So you've got the artificial language on the left-hand side, the Sobot, and on the right-hand side you have its English translations. So I want you guys to kind of have a go at this first. You're going to be giving the meaning of the Sobot sentences on the right-hand side, and then in part B you're giving the Sobot translation of the English sentences. So before you pause this and have your own go, what I want you to really pay attention to is you're going to create a list of grammar rules, and I want you to look at things like word order. So does the subject come first? Does the verb come first? Does the object come first? Look at that kind of stuff. Look at the difference between indefinite nouns and definite nouns. So in English, how we say a sheep or the sheep. The sheep is definite, a sheep is indefinite. So see if there's a difference in that. Look at the difference between a singular noun and a plural noun and how you can identify the difference. And also look at how the subject of the verb is shown and created in Sobot, as it's a little bit different to English. So you're going to create a list of grammar rules, really sort of analyze every single sentence, try to find different patterns, and yeah, pause the video here and give a go at the questions and then come back once you're done. Okay, So I want to go through it together now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through the grammar rules that I found first, and then we'll go through the questions. So the first thing that we can identify is the word order. So those are the answers on the right hand side. Give a check, and if not, we'll go through it. But the first thing that we identified is the word order. So in Sobot, it goes verb, subject, object. So the way that we found that is you can find the verb, for example, we are running, we women are running. That's a verb, and that's sunil we. And you can see that these kind of verbs are all at the beginning. So rusifi, kuri di, they all have the same pattern of endings. So they must be the verb. And then the subject actually is a subject ending. So you can find these. You can identify these by looking at the pattern. So for example, you can look at, so a postman sees the chicken. The ending is rusif a, so an a ending. For I am writing a letter, the ending is tu keb wa. You still have that a ending because they were both masculine subjects. But if you're looking at something like the waitresses see a goat, rusifi, you have that e ending, or nanny goats drink water, kuridi, you have that e ending again. So it shows that those subjects are feminine. So you can see these patterns all throughout if you have a look. And then the last thing is the object. So in the first example, the hens run, sunili refers to the running. The e bit at the end refers to the gender. So the hens are feminine. So it's a feminine ending. And then afolif means hens. That's the word for hens. Okay, and then the next one that we established are the subject endings. So these were a little trickier to find. You really kind of had to sit down and write them all out. And this is incomplete because you don't have all the information. You can use this information to guess what the rest of the subject endings would be, but I've written the ones that we are purely presented with here because those are the ones that we use in the questions. So first of all, if it is an ungendered word, there isn't an ending. So we got that information from the post office is burning. The post office doesn't have a gender. It's a place, it's a thing. And the verb there, fuber, burning, doesn't have an ending either. So we can guess that any ungendered subject doesn't have a subject ending on the verb. The next thing is the difference between feminine subject endings and masculine subject endings. So we touched on it before. So an a ending indicates that it's masculine. So you can see that in tu kebwa, I, a man, rusefa, a postman, durega, the waiter, a man. They all have that a ending. So we can guess if it has an a ending, it's masculine. However, sunil we women, luseki, a postwoman, sunili, the hens, they're all feminine subjects and they all have that e ending. But what we can identify is there's also a difference between, for example, a feminine singular and a feminine plural, and a masculine singular and a masculine plural. And then there's also a different subject ending for like I, we, and you. So they remain consistent in the a endings for any masculine subject and the e endings for any feminine subject, but there are also further differences depending whether it's singular, plural, first person, second person, third person. So we've identified that the feminine singular has an e and then a letter that's part of the verb and then an I ending. So if you look at, for example, a postwoman laughs. So lu se ki. So you've got the lus, which is part of the verb, the the and then the k, which is also part of the verb, and then the I. So e and I we can identify as referring to a feminine singular subject. However, if we're looking at a feminine plural subject, like the nanny goats drink water, kuri di, see how it's doubled the e there, then you've got the d, and then you've got the I feminine ending. So this pattern is the same in masculine singulars and masculine plurals. So for example, a postman, Rousseff A, is E and then the F and then the A, that's a masculine singular. But if you look at something like the billy goat sleeps, Sulifa, it's doubled the E with the A ending. So that's for things which are third person. So third person, you're talking about something else. However, it also changes if you're talking in first person or in second person. So first person, that's like I or we. So for the I, it's E, then the letter, and then WA. So we see that in I, a man, I'm writing a letter. So that's tu keb wa. So the E there, that's for something that's singular, and then your little verb letter, and then the wa indicates the a ending indicates that it's a masculine, so it's a man, but the wa indicates that it's yourself. So that's the first person. So we can see that the W indicates a first person subject. And then this continues in we. So we've been given a we feminine in we women are running. So they've doubled the E to show that it's a plural. So double E means plural. Then you've got your little verb letter there. You've got the I feminine ending, and then the W that indicates that it's first person. So we, that's first person. And then they've also given us an example of you, plural. So you is second person when you're talking about you. So that is in, let me find it. Oh yeah, sulifsa. So you men are sleeping. So they've doubled the E to show that it's you, it's a plural that they're talking about. You've got your little verb letter. You've got your A at the end to show it's masculine. And then you've got the S there. So the S, we can guess, means second person, identifies the second person. So you can use that to actually figure out what you singular would be. We can guess it would just be one E, the verb letter, and then an S, and then either an A or an I if it's feminine. And we can also use that for any of the other ones as well. Okay, and then the next thing that we identified is difference between singular versus plural nouns. So we identified through looking at the difference between a singular goat or multiple goats. So a singular goat is at the waitresses see a goat, so Paris, that's the word for goat. But then if you look at the plural for goats, we've actually got two examples. So we've got billy goats, which is porous, but then we've also got nanny goats here, which is also porous. So it shows that if it's a plural, whether it's male or female, it's going to have the same spelling. And from this information, we can guess that in singular, the E changes to an O. Now, we haven't been given more information to know what happens if, for example, the noun doesn't have an E in it, what happens then? But for now, we've been given that information, and that's what we can use in, for example, part 2, question A. So the E in the singular changes to an O in the plural. And then the last thing is about the difference between definite versus indefinite nouns. So we can see that an A apostrophe identifies a definite noun. So we can see that in the post office is à passette, the waitresses à mortier, the waiter à métier, whereas in an indefinite noun, a postman is just passette, or a letter is just tekab. So there's nothing for an indefinite noun. Okay. So let's go through the answers together now. So the first question was give the English meaning of fuper tekab. So the answer is a letter is burning. So first of all, remember that the verb comes first. So we need to find out the verb for burning, and we found that in the post office is burning. So the verb is fuber. And then we need to figure out, does it need a subject ending? And remember when we said if it's an ungendered object, so it's not got a gender, then it doesn't have an ending. There's no subject ending on the verb. So you just leave it as fuber. And then you've got to find the word, what tekab means. So we look, and find that tekab means a letter. So remember, since there's no a apostrophe there, it has to mean a letter and not the letter. So that's pretty important to remember. So you say a letter is burning, or it could also be a letter burns, since there's no difference between the progressive tense and the simple tenses, like they said earlier. And then the next bit, sulifi apposite. So we're going to figure out, what does sulifi mean? So we can look and we can find sulifa, and that means to sleep there, or sulifsa also means to sleep. So we know that this means something to do with sleeping. We need to find out a little bit more about it. So we look at whether it is a plural. So does it have a singular E in the verb or a double E? It's got a double E, so that means it must be plural. And then we look at the ending. Is there anything to indicate that it's first or second person? Well, no, because in first person you have the W to show that it's first person. Second person you have the S to show that it's second person. Whereas in third person there's nothing, it's just the feminine or masculine endings. And here we have the feminine ending, the E. So it's plural women sleep. And then we look at apposite. What does possit mean? Well, we can look and we find that pessit is a postwoman. And remember we said that if it's an E in the singular, it changes to an O in the plural, like with the goats. So pessit becomes possit, so that means that postwoman becomes postwomen. And we know that whilst we said in the plural nouns they don't have a gender, because we found the gender out in the verb ending, that's why it must be postwomen and not just post people. Okay, so you get 3 marks each for that, and that's for each sort of bit. So like getting the gender and amount right, and the verbiage as well. Okay, and then in B, this part is a little bit trickier because you have to translate it into the language. So you look at you men see a chicken. So you're trying to find out start with the verb first, because it goes verb, subject, object. So we're looking for the word to see. So we find that in a postman sees the chicken. So that's rusefa. But then you have to change it so that it matches the subject. You need to add the subject endings and change the verb to match it. So it's talking about you, so that's second person. Remember we found our you there, and you use the S to indicate that it's second person. Talking about men, so it needs to have the masculine A at the end. And men is a plural, so it needs to have the double E there as well. So that's why it has to be rusifsa. And then a chicken is the word that you're looking for. So if it's indefinite, it doesn't have the A apostrophe, so that's all right. And then you have to find the word for chicken, which is here. So felif. So that's why it's rusifsa, felif. And then the very, very last one, a waiter is running. So you find the word for running in we women are running, so sunil we. So since then you have to do the verb ending / the middle bit. So since it's a masculine, a waiter is masculine, so it has to have the masculine A at the end. And since the waiter is singular, it just has one E and not two E's. So that's why it has to be sunella. And then you find the word for waiter. So we find that in Durga Amete, and you take the A apostrophe off to make it indefinite. And then you get sunella mete. And that's the answer. So in the MLAT test, this is like an example of one of the first ones you get, and it gets progressively harder and harder as they give you more information and ask you to identify more grammar rules. So it can get a lot harder than this, but if you were in a Cambridge interview, they'll usually give you something quick like this to work through. And the good thing about interviews is that you can talk through your different ideas. So you don't need to be spot on at the beginning, but the more you talk it through and see patterns, the more you'll understand it by the end. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed and you learned a little bit more about how to read patterns in artificial languages, and hopefully this prepped you a little bit for any admissions test you might do. Thank you.